The drop zone, the sky above the alien world, turned dark as the survival ships dropped one by one. Dozens of races were chosen to take part in the Galactic Survival Challenge. It was an ancient tradition, a test of raw skill, instinct, and will. All advanced tech was banned. No weapons. No comms. Just bare hands and what nature offered. The rules were simple. Survive for 7 days. Build shelter. Find food. Defend yourself. Each species was placed in their own zone. If you couldn't adapt fast, you were out. And out meant dead. The alien. Team from the Vari system hit the ground first. Thin, tall, and elegant, the Vari were used to cold logic and lab-grown food. They looked around the dense jungle and froze. No machines. No tools. Just trees, dirt, and danger. On the other side of the same valley, the humans dropped next. Their group was small, only 5 people. All calm, no panic. The moment they landed, one of them looked up at the sun's angle and said, "We've got about 10 hours of daylight left. Let's move." His name was Tom. He was a builder. Beside him stood Dina, a scout who already had a stone in her hand, testing its weight. Mark, the fire guy, was dragging a dry branch. Lee and Jonas followed with quick eyes and strong hands. No one spoke much. They didn't need to. Their training had kicked in. Back across the jungle, the Vari were still walking in circles. They were arguing over how to analyze the soil before touching it. One wanted to sit and meditate. Another looked around for something to sanitize the plants before trying them. A few were trying to remember how to make fire, but they had never even seen fire without tech before. The humans already had smoke rising. Tom had cut small branches using sharp rocks. Dina had found dry leaves. Mark used the friction method with wood. His hands burned, but soon a spark caught. Fire danced like it had been waiting for them. By midday, they had walls. Thick logs tied with vines formed a square. Not perfect, but strong. They dug a trench and shaped a gate. Jonas set traps with small twigs. Lee spotted a strange lizard and made notes of its pattern. Their fort was not just protection, it was control. And they did it before the sun dipped behind the cliffs. Meanwhile, the Vari had chosen a spot for a peace circle. They were drawing symbols in the dirt, hoping some animal would respect it. One of them finally tried to light a fire with sunlight and a piece of crystal. It didn't work. They hadn't eaten, no shelter. And night was coming fast. On day 1, humans didn't just survive. They dominated. As darkness crept in, the jungle changed. Loud animal howls echoed through the trees. Eyes blinked from the shadows. The Vari huddled together, exposed. No food, no fire, no tools. Back at the human fort, the fire crackled. Meat sizzled on a rock slab. They had built a fire ring, sharpened spears, and chosen sleeping shifts. One human sat on the wall, watching the tree line. Another sharpened more tools. They weren't afraid. They were ready. In a hidden part of the jungle, small cameras watched everything. The Galactic Council observed each species' progress silently. One of the observers leaned forward as the human camp came into view. "They've already built a fort?" The alien observer asked in disbelief. "Yes," another replied. And their fire output reached stable levels within 2 hours of landing. Impossible. That's faster than the survival model predicted. Much faster. The observer turned and looked at the screen showing the Vari. They haven't even started. Another screen showed other alien species still wandering, confused, some sitting on rocks, others building piles of leaves like nests. Only the humans stood behind. Walls, and the jungle watched them too. A pair of glowing eyes stared at the human fort from the shadows. The creature didn't move. It waited. It sensed something different, something dangerous. Then the wind shifted. The scent of smoke and cooked meat reached its nose. The creature backed away. This wasn't prey. These were Deathworlders. The creatures. Come at night, the sun dropped below the horizon, and a thick blanket of darkness spread across the alien jungle. No stars above, just mist, clouds, and sounds that didn't belong to any Earth forest. Night on this planet wasn't quiet. It moved. It breathed. The Vari trembled in their circle of scratched dirt. They had no fire. Their long fingers clutched each other. Every rustle made them jump. One of them had found a rock to use as a ritual ward, but it did nothing against the things creeping in the brush. The shadows were alive. A low growl broke the silence. One Vari screamed and started to run. The rest followed, sprinting blindly into the trees. But they couldn't see, and they didn't know the land. Something fast moved between them. Screams echoed. Then silence. Far away, the human camp was calm. Tom sat by the fire sharpening his spear. Jonas was posted up in the watchtower and made with logs and vines. Dina was inside the fort's walls, checking the perimeter traps. Lee rested near the fire, half asleep, but with one hand on a sharpened stick. Mark stirred a pot over the flames made from gathered roots, water, and a bit of roasted meat from the lizard they had caught earlier. Then Jonas called out, low but firm movement. Everyone stood up at once, calm but ready. They didn't panic. They moved like a team that had done this before. Weapons in hand, backs to the firelight, they scanned the jungle. Jonas whispered. 2 creatures, 4-legged, low to the ground, watching from the west. Tom stepped up beside him and peered into the brush. His voice was steady. There, testing us. Dina returned from the traps with a small animal carcass and raised a brow. Want to show them we bite back? No, Tom said, shaking his head. Let them come. We don't waste energy unless we have to. Minutes passed. Then, rustling again, a faint growl. This time from the north. They're circling. Mark said, trying to find the weak spot. Jonas smiled slightly. They'll be disappointed. From the shadows, 2 creatures broke into a charge, dark, sleek, armored with scales that reflected firelight. Sharp teeth. Fast. The first one leapt straight toward the wall. Snap. The ground under it gave way. Dina's trap. A pit with sharpened stakes at the bottom. The beast let out one final scream and was still. The second creature tried a different angle closer to the gate. Tom didn't wait. He threw his spear fast and hard. It hit the beast in the shoulder, knocking it sideways. Before it could get up, Mark was already over the wall with a second spear. One precise strike through the neck, and it was done. Silence returned to the jungle. The humans dragged both creatures inside. The meat would be food, the bones tools. The skins armor. Jonas muttered, and they thought banning tech would slow us down. Lee grinned. We've got teeth sharper than machines. By sunrise, the Vari had regrouped 3 fewer in number. Their leader was crying softly, unable to move from fear. They had spent the entire night running, hiding, and bleeding. Number. Shelter. No fire. No food. Just fear. Meanwhile, the human camp had grown. More logs had been added to reinforce the walls. The gate now had spikes. A watch system had been marked with stones and a time rotation. 2 creatures were already being skinned and cleaned. Bones soaked in a pot to make broth and glue. Even smoke signals had been prepared, just in case. But they knew no one would be coming to rescue them, and they didn't need it. In the Galactic Council's observation room, the alien monitors now showed massive imbalance. Human team, full strength, fortified, 0 injuries. Vari team, below critical threshold, 3 lost. Morale collapsing. One council member stared at the human feed. They built a fort, defended it, and hunted in one night. The elder beside him whispered, "They weren't surviving. They were adapting. Like it was just another hostile zone on Earth." Another added, "This isn't a survival test for them. It's just ... Tuesday. Asterisk day 2, tools, traps, and territory." The jungle was quiet in the early morning, but it wasn't peace, it was caution. The predators had learned something. The night before, there was now a part of the forest they would not enter, not because of a scent or signal, but because of the fire, the sharp walls, and the humans who moved like apex hunters. Inside the fort, Tom stepped outside the gate as the sun rose, spear in hand. "We need more wood," he said, "thicker ones. We'll expand the wall by noon." Dina joined him, slinging a bundle of rope-like vines across her back. "I'll check the northwest trail. Might be more game out there." Mark picked up the hollowed bones from the night's kill. "I'll shape these into fishing hooks. That river to the east smells like it's got life." Lee ran her fingers through the dirt, her eyes scanning the plants nearby. "Found some roots that might be safe. Bitter, but edible. I'll cook and test small portions." Jonas climbed the watch post again, adjusting the stone marker they used to track time by shadow. "We're ahead of schedule. This planet's got rhythm. We're just dancing faster than the others." By midday, their wall had doubled in size. A second layer was forming, logs sharpened and planted at an outward angle to discourage climbing. Inside the perimeter, they dug a smoke pit to dry meat, created a water filter with gravel and cloth, and tied a wind chime of bones that would rattle if anything large approached from the rear. Everything had a purpose. Every move was survival, and controlled. Far across the valley, the Vari had collapsed under a tree. Their hands were scratched, their feet bleeding from thorns. One had tried eating raw leaves, and now lay groaning. No tools, no shelter. They had tried stacking sticks to form a hut, but they had no rope, no method, no unity. Fear still ruled their actions. In contrast, the humans were moving deeper into the forest. Dina returned, dragging the body of a strange animal that looked like a mix between a boar and a lizard. It had tusks and armor plates. It was wounded already. "Easy kill," she said. Casually, Tom nodded. "That skin make a great water pouch." Mark returned with a small fish, caught using a spear and a carved hook. "River's not deep, but it's got meat. I'll build a net next." Jonas studied a map he drew in the dirt with a stick. "North has a cave system. We should check it. Soon. Could be dangerous or could be a mine." That evening, Lee made a stew with careful portions of roots and boiled meat. She gave everyone small servings first, watching for signs of sickness. But they were fine. It wasn't tasty, but it filled the belly as the fire crackled again. They sat around the circle and marked their achievements: fire, fort, food, tools, map, traps, medicine testing. They weren't just surviving. They were evolving. Above them, the council watched with growing tension. "The humans are accelerating," one alien observer said. "They've already begun napping territory." Another replied, "They're treating this planet like a puzzle to solve, not a threat to fear." A third tapped the screen showing other species. Most others are still trying to make fire. The humans had made a hammer using stone, vine, and bone. That night, the jungle stayed back. Nothing approached the fort, not even the boldest predator. They had watched their kind fall. They had heard the screams, smelled the blood, and saw how the humans never hesitated. But the council knew something else. This test wasn't just about food and fire. Day 3 would bring a new challenge, one even the humans hadn't prepared for. The aliens were about to send something into the jungle, something worse than animals. Asterisk. The test shifts, and the enemy thinks the third sunrise was hidden by thick gray clouds. The jungle air had changed. It wasn't just the smell of damp soil or strange pollen. It was heavier, like something was watching. Waiting. Inside the human fort, the team moved like clockwork. Lee was already boiling root paste for medicine. Mark sharpened spears with bone tips. Dina checked the traps and returned with 2 small creatures. Jonas was tying knots for a stronger rope system, and Tom stood at the gate, staring out into the trees. "We're not alone anymore," he said softly. Dina nodded. "Animals are gone. No movement last night." "That's not nature, it's fear." Tom knelt by the fire and dragged a stick through the dirt. "Something smarter is out there now." They were right. Far deeper in the jungle. The test had changed. The council had activated the second phase, a true survival threat. They had sent in the Gorok, a controlled predator species bred for speed, hunting, and killing in silence. These creatures weren't native to the jungle. They were blind, but sensed heat, movement, and breath. And they moved in packs. Most species wouldn't last an hour. The Vari barely made it 10 minutes. Their already weakened group was caught near a shallow stream. They tried to run, but the Gorok were too fast. One Vari was lifted off the ground and thrown into a tree. The rest scattered. No fire, no weapons, no defense. The council watched silently, but they turned with concern when a Gorak moved toward the human sector. The beast crept low to the ground, silent, deadly. Its nostrils flared as it caught the scent of cooked meat and sweat. It neared the wall, then froze. The bones hanging near the entrance rattled softly. A warning. Inside the fort, Jonas stood. Movement. South gate. Tom was beside him in seconds. "What size?" "Bigger than anything we've seen." Dina rushed to the wall with her long spear. "It's testing the air." Mark stood by the fire. "Light the second ring. If it comes closer, we blind it." Lee brought 2 jars of ash and scattered them around the ground, revealing footsteps and movement trails. The Gorak moved again. Closer. And it leapt, but it didn't hit the wall. It dove straight into the ground pit, the deepest one. Bones cracked. The creature howled in pain. Before it could crawl out, Dina was already at the edge. She thrust her spear downward fast and hard. Again and again. Tom joined her. The creature twitched once, then stopped moving. They stared at it in silence. Mark whispered, "That's not just a predator. That was sent here." Tom nodded. "This isn't a wild test anymore. Someone's changing the rules." The humans pulled the body out, dragging it inside the fort. The creature was unlike anything they'd seen armored, but soft in places. No eyes, long teeth, tough hide. Jonas studied it. Smart. It went for heat. No sound. That's a trained killer. "And they sent it to us," Leah said. Her voice was quiet but firm, which means they're scared of how fast we're winning. Later that night, more Gorak approached, but none entered. They had smelled blood, heard pain, and understood now. This prey fought back. It didn't just run. It set traps, killed efficiently, and took trophies. Humans were not part of the food chain. They were the top of it. Above. In the council chamber, there was silence. One elder finally spoke. "If they build a forge next, it's over." Another whispered, "They've already made rope, walls, traps, fire, and tools. If they reach metallurgy, they won't just survive. They'll colonize." And on the jungle floor, Tom sat sharpening metal he had found inside a strange black rock Dina discovered in a creek bed. The fire made it glow slightly. He didn't smile, but he knew. They had found iron. The humans begin forging, and the game changes forever. Sound of clinking stones echoed through the human camp as the sun rose on day 4. The night had Passed without another attack. The Orcs stayed away. But the humans didn't waste time celebrating. They were already preparing for what came next. Tom crouched beside the fire pit, staring at the chunk of dark stone Dina had brought from the creek. He had cracked it open with a hammer made from bone and rock, and now something strange glinted inside, a shimmer of metal. "I think this is iron ore," he said, voice low with certain Dotmark leaned over. "You serious?" "Not refined yet," Tom replied, "but I've seen this before. If we can build a clay furnace and get it hot enough, we can melt it." "Shape it," Dina grinned. "Then let's build it." Lee and Jonas joined without question. They worked all morning. Using hardened mud and stone, they shaped a crude furnace. They lined the inside with clay and added layers of charcoal they made the day before. Mark created a bellows by cutting and shaping animal skin into a pouch. It wasn't perfect, but it moved air. By noon, the furnace roared. The heat burned their hands and faces, but they kept going. They added the ore. They waited. Then, slowly, they saw a red glow at the base. It wasn't a full melt, but the metal softened. It separated. They scraped it out with sticks and let it cool on a flat rock. It was crude iron, but it was real. Tom held it up to the firelight. "We're no longer just surviving," Dina added. "We're building." By the time the stars returned, the humans had made their first metal-tipped spear. Rough, uneven, but deadly. Jonas tested it on a thick tree branch, and it split it clean in half. They stared at the weapon in silence. Then Lee said, "We're changing the balance." And they were. Across the jungle, the other species were still fumbling. The Vari had built a small wall, but it collapsed in the wind. They had no fire. One had fallen sick from spoiled fruit. Another group, the Creel, had caught a single bird, but it exploded in spores when cut. Poisoned 3 of them instantly. No one else had found metal. No one else had made weapons. And now, the humans were expanding. Tom assigned roles. "Tomorrow, we start clearing a second zone. If we can build another wall line around the stream, we can control water flow and food." Mark nodded. "And we make a second furnace. I want to try shaping this into a knife." Jonas looked toward the cliffs. "We should scout higher ground. If this goes on longer, we'll need full territory maps." Lee drew a circle in the dirt, with lines running outward. "We're not just reacting now. We're thinking ahead. That's what separates us." In the council chamber above, the observers were panicking. They've created a forge. They're forging metal weapons. This was supposed to be a survival test, not a war simulation. One of the elders stood, slamming his fist on the table. "No species has ever built a working furnace by day 4. Another voice said, softly, "They're not a normal species." A silence filled the chamber. Then one whispered, "They're from a death world." The word carried weight. It meant humans were born in a place so brutal, so full of natural danger, that they had adapted to fight constantly. Their biology was shaped by predators, their minds by pressure, their cultures by survival. And now, the Deathworlders were building something the Council had never expected: a stronghold. Asterisk. The stronghold rises and the Council considers breaking the rules by day 5. The human camp no longer looked like a camp. It looked like a fortress. The outer walls had doubled in height and thickness. New watchtowers stood at each corner symbol, but tall enough to see above the treetops. Inside, the second forge was active. Spears with metal tips lined the walls, and they had started carving shields from the bones of predators they had slain. The smoke pit dried meat constantly. A small irrigation trench brought clean water inside the compound. They had even built 2 sleeping shelters with leaf-covered roofs to protect from the evening storms. It was no longer survival. It was Civilization Dot, and they were just getting started. Tom stood on the main tower, scanning the jungle. He could feel it in the air. Something was coming, not just animals. Something worse. Jonas climbed up beside him. You feel it too? Tom nodded. This planet's too quiet. Either everything's dead or hiding. Back at the forge, Mark was shaping a flat piece of iron into a rough axe head. If we had just a few more pieces, I could build something. Heavier, he muttered. Dina returned from a scouting run. Saw movement. But it wasn't Gorak this time, tall, walking upright. Aliens? Tom asked. Didn't get close enough, Dina said. But they were watching. Lee spoke from behind them, holding the Council's survival rules slate. We're not supposed to have contact until day 7. Tom narrowed his eyes. They're breaking their own rules. And they were right. Up in the Galactic Council's chamber, the mood had turned dark. They've gone too far, one elder said. No other species can keep up. Another barked. They've claimed over 30% of the region already. A third growled. This isn't a test anymore, it's a takeover. One elder in deep blue robes stood slowly. We must intervene. Adjust the test. Reset the conditions. Another counselor hesitated. That would be cheating. There. Deathworlders, the robed figure said coldly. They don't belong in the same league. We weren't prepared. But this test was their idea. Remember? They volunteered. Silence followed. The humans had been warned. No tech, no help, no rescue. Still, they entered willingly. And now, they were building something more dangerous than any weapon. They were building permanence. Back on the ground, the humans weren't waiting for answers. Jonas and Dina had spotted movement along the cliff path. They set trap strip lines, swinging logs, spiked pits hidden beneath leaves. Tom ordered a third wall built, smaller, but meant to serve as a fallback position. Lee expanded the drying rack and began crafting something unusual, a signal pattern using smoke. One puff, then 3 short bursts. A warning. A message. Mark finished. The axe. By sunset, they tested it on a fallen tree. It split the trunk in 2, and the jungle grew silent again. That night, Tom gathered the team. We're no longer surviving. We've taken control, but they're watching now. Whoever they send next won't be wild. Dina nodded. They'll be sentient, armed, trained. Mark added, they want to stop us before we build something even more dangerous. Lee looked around at their small but growing fort, her eyes clear. They're too late. Above, council members watched the humans gather near the fire. Their movements were precise. Their expressions were calm, not angry, not afraid. Just ready. The elder in blue turned to the others. If we don't stop them now, they'll change the rules of this galaxy. A low voice answered, maybe they already have. And in the jungle, at the very edge of the human-claimed territory, figures in armor appeared, sent not to observe, but to test the humans in combat. The final phase had begun. The final phase. They sent soldiers, but met something far worse. The armored figures crept through the jungle, silent and disciplined. Their armor shimmered with cloaking tech. These weren't beasts. They were elites, chosen warriors from the councils. Enforcement division. Trained to subdue. Trained to strike fast and disappear. Their orders were simple. Observe. Intimidate. Disable if necessary. But no one expected the humans to already be waiting. In the fort, Tom stood beside the main gate. A watchtower team had spotted movement. An hour ago, unnatural, quiet, too smooth for animals. It wasn't the Gorak. It wasn't wild. It was sentient. We've got company, Jonas confirmed, peering through a crack in the wall. Dina crouched near the fire, tying a rope to a sharpened log. How many? At least 5, maybe 6. Lee lit 2 torches and placed them near the wall's edge. They want us to see them, but not all of them. Mark held the axe loosely, his eyes scanning the shadows. They're testing us. Tom nodded. Good. Let's show them the results. As the shadows moved closer, one figure stepped out. Of the jungle, tall, armored, visor glowing faintly. It raised an open palm, a gesture of peace. Tom didn't move. Then the figure spoke in a smooth, artificial voice. Human group, stand down. The survival phase has been paused. You are too. Await extraction. This region is under council supervision. No one answered. Dina whispered, Pause the test? That's not part of the rules. Jonas muttered, They're scared. Tom stepped forward, just enough so the soldier could hear him. Rules don't change just because we're winning, he said flatly. The figure tilted its head slightly. This is not a negotiation. Another stepped out from the brush behind the fort. Then another moving to flank. Lee dropped the signal torch, 3 puffs, and one long smoke trail. It drifted upward, curling in the moonlight. A moment later, one of the flanking soldiers triggered a trap. Snap. A massive spiked log swung down and crashed into his side, throwing him into a tree with a crunch of metal. Sparks flew. The jungle fell still, and chaos exploded. Tom yelled, Defensive positions. Mark hurled a spear with perfect aim. It struck another armored figure square in the chest. The armor cracked. The soldier staggered. Jonas dropped from the tower, with a sharpened blade slashing a third figure as it tried to climb the wall. He rolled, landed, and came up swinging. The soldiers weren't ready for this. They expected panic. They expected fear. Instead, they faced formation, discipline, and controlled fury. The final soldier tried to fall back, but Dina was already behind him. She didn't hesitate. One clean strike to the back of the helmet, and he dropped. Minutes passed. Then silence. The humans stood, breathing heavily, but calm. All 6 council soldiers lay still, wounded, disabled, or unconscious. Tom walked over to the lead figure, knelt, and removed the cracked helmet. Inside was a reptilian face, bruised and stunned. Tom leaned close. Tell your council. Next. Time. Send builders, not cowards. He stood, turned to the others. Strip the armor. We'll learn from it. By morning, the humans had re-engineered the suits into stronger plating for their fort. They hung 2 of the helmets outside the gate. Warnings. In orbit. The council chambers were in chaos. They defeated 6 elite enforcers. They didn't just fight. They upgraded using our own gear. One elder shook his head in disbelief. We tried to stop them, and gave them more power instead. The oldest voice in the room whispered, You don't stop Deathworlders. You adapt to them or get out of their way. Back on the surface, the jungle had fallen completely silent, not out of fear, but out of respect. Because by day 7, the humans hadn't just survived. They ruled. And the stars had just begun to learn what it meant to challenge Earth. Asterisk.